Hi everyone, Mrs. Rondinella. I'm here to offer you a meditation. One, because you always love them so much, but two, because it's a great way to learn Scripture, to meditate on the Scripture, to really understand it and put yourself in the scriptural passage. We're moving into the resurrection of Jesus. That's what our next unit is all about, and it's perfect timing because we just celebrated Easter. So I want you to find a comfortable position. If you're sitting on a chair, your flat should be back against the chair and your legs right out in front of you with your feet flat on the floor. Find a lying down position. Get comfortable, but not comfortable enough that you're going to fall asleep. And just imagine heat entering from the top of your head all the way down through your body. And you can do that on your own now. Just down into your shoulders, to your hands and the palms of your hands. Down into your legs and down into your toes. I'm going to start the scripture, but while I'm doing that, I want you to continue to just kind of measure your body to see what your body is doing and just to relax it and allow heat and warmth to enter your body. I'm going to talk about the scripture first. What I'd like you to do is, as I speak, I want you to think of some of the characters in the story. There are so many characters here. And I'd like you first to think, when I go through it the first time, I want you to think about what character you like, who you identify with, and who you would want to be. Then I'm going to quiet you down, and then I'm going to go through the scripture, and you're going to be that person and really try to experience what it is like when you're there and you realize that Jesus has risen from the dead. So this is from the Gospel of John. I'm going to begin with the burial of Jesus because this is important, where the tomb is. After the crucifixion of Jesus, a man named Joseph of Arimathea, he was secretly a disciple of Jesus. He asks Pilate if he can remove the body of Jesus, and Pilate says yes. So he comes and he takes the body, and he has a friend Nicodemus along with him, who comes along and brings a mixture of myrrh and aloes, weighing about 100 pounds. Think about how heavy that is. Nicodemus carrying this mixture. And they take the body and they anoint the body. They take burial cloths and they wrap Jesus in the cloth with the spices according to the Jewish custom. So picture them in the tomb wrapping Jesus up. Now the tomb is in a garden nearby where Jesus was crucified. It's a brand new tomb. There's nobody else in there. And the stone is more like a wheel that would be rolled in front of the tomb. It's not like a round, big round rock like we think of. It's probably like a round wheel. On the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene comes, and she's been an apostle of Jesus for a while now. She comes and she also wants to just sit in front of the tomb. But when she gets there, she realizes that the stone has been removed from the tomb. And she runs back to Simon Peter and the other disciple whom Jesus loved. Now, this is John's eyewitness account. So when he says the other disciple whom Jesus loved, he's referring to himself. John is the youngest. Peter is the one that Jesus has passed on the ministry to. He's probably the oldest. John is the youngest, and he's probably only 15, 16 years old because that's when they began working. So it's not unusual for Jesus to have recruited, so to speak, someone who's young and going to keep the ministry going. They go running to the tomb, but they both run, but the other disciple, meaning himself, John, runs faster than Peter. He gets there, and he's the first one to see that the burial cloths are there, but he doesn't go in. Then Peter gets there, and he sees the burial cloths there, and the cloth that covered Jesus' head, not with the cloths rolled up, but they're in a separate spot. Now, this is important because if you watch the video on the Shroud of Turin, you know that there is another cloth that's smaller than the shroud that matches up with the wounds on the shroud, and that they believe that that was a separate head wrap. And then Jesus was wrapped up into the cloth. They go in and they see the cloth there, and they realize right away that Jesus has risen from the dead. Now, Mary Magdalene, meanwhile, is outside crying. She doesn't realize yet that Jesus has risen. She's out there crying. She sees two angels, and they say to her, "Why are you weeping?" Two men in white. and she says, someone has taken my Lord and I don't know where he is. So imagine Mary's being so frightened, like, what's going on here? And then she turns and she sees a man, and the man says to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" And it's Jesus. But Mary doesn't recognize him. So there's obviously something different about Jesus, the resurrected Jesus. He looks different. And she says to him, she thinks he's the gardener, and she says, "Sir, if you've taken him, tell me where he is, and I want to go get him." And then Jesus says to her, "Mary." And she turns and she realizes it's Jesus. When he says her name, she recognizes him. Think how often when someone changes their appearance, they grow up or something, you haven't seen them in a while, you don't recognize them, but as soon as they say something, especially if they were to say your name, you would recognize them. And that's what happens here. She grabs onto Jesus, and Jesus says, kind of just says to her, "Don't hold on to me too tightly. I still have to go back to the Father." So I'm going to go through that scripture again now, and I want you to think about who you'd like to be. Joseph of Arimathea. You could be Nicodemus. You could be the tomb itself. You could be the rock that gets rolled over. You could be Mary Magdalene, who's the first to realize that Jesus isn't there. You could be Peter, the oldest one, who gets there second after John, but is the first one to go in and see the cloths, who has such a great responsibility that Jesus has given him. You could be John, the one that John thinks he's Jesus' favorite because he's the youngest. And or you could then be the angels that are sitting there and wondering why Mary is crying because they know what's going on. And then, or you could be then Jesus. When Jesus turns around, and when Mary turns around, thinks he's the gardener, Jesus says her name, and she's so surprised, but she realizes then that it's Jesus. You can be Jesus, who is risen from the dead. And so whoever you are, if you're Joseph and Nicodemus, just kind of picture yourself there watching the scene even after your particular action is done. If you're Jesus, watch everything going on before you even speak to Mary. So the burial of Jesus. Joseph of Arimathea, he's secretly a disciple of Jesus, asks Pilate if he can remove the body of Jesus. And Pilate permitted it. So Joseph comes and takes the body. Nicodemus, his friend, who is also there at night, came bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes weighing about 100 pounds. They took the body of Jesus and they bound it with burial cloths along with the spices, according to the Jewish burial custom. Now, in the place where Jesus had been crucified was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb, in which no one had yet been buried. So they laid Jesus there, because the tomb was close by. On the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene comes to the tomb early in the morning, while it was still dark, and she sees the stone removed from the tomb. So she runs and went to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, who is John, and told them, "They have taken the Lord from the tomb, and I don't know where they put him." So Peter and the other disciple, John, runs out and comes to the tomb. They both ran, but the other disciple ran faster than Peter. John, the younger one, gets there first. The other disciple, John, gets there first, and he bends down and just looks and sees the burial cloths there, but he doesn't go in. When Simon Peter arrives after him, he went into the tomb and he saw the burial cloths there, and the cloth that had covered his head, not with the burial cloths, but rolled up in a separate place. Then the other disciple, John, also went in, the one who had arrived there first, and he saw and he believed right away. Yet they did not understand that the scripture had told them Jesus would rise from the dead. And they returned home. Mary Magdalene is still there, and she's weeping at the tomb. And as she wept, she bent over into the tomb and saw two angels in white sitting there, one at the head and one at the feet where the body of Jesus had been. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken my Lord, and I don't know where they put him." When she said this, she turned around, and she saw Jesus there, but she did not know it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" She thought it was the gardener, and said to him, "Sir, if you carried him away, tell me where you laid him, and I will take him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Stop holding on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and tell them that I am going to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary of Magdala went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and what she told them. Now think about how you were feeling in that scripture. The disciples, they see the burial cloths, but they don't see Jesus. The first one to see Jesus is Mary Magdalene. They think they understand what happened, but they don't actually see Jesus yet. So I want you to think about how you felt in that scripture as that person. And if you can pick just one feeling that you experienced, what was the strongest feeling? So for Mary, it might have been sorrowful, it might have been surprise, it might have been joy, it might have been fear. Whoever you were and whatever you felt, think about how you felt and just experience it. Allow yourself to go to that feeling again and experience it. Now I want you to take that feeling and apply it to your life. Think to yourself, is that how I am feeling right now in my own life? Again, for example, if you felt sorrowful because you were Mary weeping, do you feel sorrowful right now in your life? What are you weeping about? If you were John, who gets there first, full of energy, do you feel that same vibrancy right now? And how can you use that vibrancy and channel it into doing good? If you were Joseph and Nicodemus preparing the body, think about how they might have felt. Kind of happy to be doing such an honor, but at the same time sad because they're handling this crucified, tortured body. And think about that, how they might be feeling. And apply it to your life. And why did you choose that person? Why did you choose that person and experience that one feeling? There's a reason for it. So I want you to reflect on that for the next few days. And you can go back to the scripture yourself and read it again yourself and do this again. You can even record your own self, right? It's from the Gospel of John, the end of 19 and the beginning of chapter 20. So I want you now to just quietly calm yourself. Sit with how you feel. Sit with the experience. Speak to God in your heart. Allow God to enter your heart and to touch you with His warmth. Maybe you've been watching this fire here on the video. Think about the heat and the light and the warmth that Jesus can offer you as well. And just sit with yourself. Relax, continue to breathe. Relax your body. Keep reflecting on who you are in the story, but that also is an indication of who you think you are right now in your own life. How you saw that character is perhaps how you see yourself right now. Just allow yourself to experience that. And I hope to see all of you really soon.